Heiko Khoo, he's famous. If you ever go to Hyde Park Corner, I'll hand over to him.
Back in 1989, I was living in East Germany when the Berlin Wall fell. And they used to say that when the Berlin Wall falls, we'll have freedom, democracy, and the money will be spent that we're spending on weapons will be spent on raising the living standards of the people in the West and providing peace, freedom, and plenty for the whole of the world. They also, by the way, in confirmation of what Vladimir Putin said the other day, they did say in 1989, 1990, that NATO will not move 1 centimetre east of the German border. That's what they promised. And that was the basis upon which the Russians withdrew, or Soviets withdrew, from Eastern Europe. Now, at the time they said, in Eastern Europe, in China, in the Soviet Union, they don't have a free press. You can't demonstrate, you can't assemble, you can't move. And yet, every single aspect of what they condemned in the Soviet Union has now become reality in the Western world, but far worse than what they claim existed in those countries. Far worse. As technology allowed us to communicate in ever greater means, as we got more and more interconnected in the world, they began to fear that some of that information would leak out, and it did. Someone mentioned a minute ago the Yugoslav war. Information leaked out about the Yugoslav war, the Rambouillet Accord, the battle between France and America, and the bombing in Croatia carried out by on behalf of the United States of America, which escalated the war in Bosnia. Then they had lies in preparation for the Iraq war and the Afghan war, and information began to sneak out about that and spread to the population. Many people thought September the 11th and other events were orchestrated, at least partly, by the establishment. Now, I'm not going to take a position on that. The point is that the information was getting out and people were asking questions which went to the core of the way in which power and information dissemination was exercised. Then came Julian Assange, Edward Snowden, Chris Riley with the Facebook saga and the manipulation of elections. All the while, we thought that the increasing information availability would empower people to gain control over their lives and increase the power of the people versus the state. But what happened after the Arab Spring was that the states began to utilize the entire infrastructure of information to consolidate it into the hands of a minuscule elite of billionaires and big tech corporations, who in conjunction with Big Pharma, with the military, with the government, with the intelligence agencies, took control of the information infrastructure of the entire planet. And woe betide anyone who challenged that control that they had. And that is where we're at now. Julian Assange is in prison as an example, and then what followed afterwards was they began to look at everyone. All of you at some stage or other have been fact-checked. All of you at some stage or other have been deleted or frozen for a period of time. But more importantly, every single human being on earth is now under permanent surveillance by the intelligence agencies, run by big tech, in order to consolidate artificial intelligence as a mechanism to control every human being on earth by robots and artificial intelligence and drones. And what they're doing in Israel or in Gaza against the people in Gaza is preparation for what they're prepared to do in Britain, in Europe and America against us, against all the people in the Western world, as well as the countries around the world who are usually dominated by imperial power. What they are doing to the people in Gaza, they will do to us. That is the point about why we need to struggle against that barbarity being carried out. Israel, what people know, there's some people here got up a stand. Some of them were arrested, many people here don't even know. They were arrested on the mass demonstrations of hundreds of thousands of people for selling books and handing out leaflets questioning the narrative we are given about Gaza, where Britain and America are supplying the weapons and means to slaughter the people while washing their hands every day and claiming they're for peace. But the people who are arrested for giving out leaflets, they weren't arrested for normal crimes. They were charged with terrorism. It is terrorism now, according to the establishment, to give out a leaflet. A bloody leaflet. I was a member of the National Union of Journalists until November the 5th, 2020. At the beginning, I believed the story about lockdowns and COVID and the rest of it. Then I began to question, is it really true, everything they're saying? Are they not lying about X, Y, and Z and B and whatever? Are they not lying about the big pharma interventions? Are they not lying about the vaccines? Are they not lying about the injuries? Are they not lying about the lockdowns? During the lockdowns, the biggest transfer of wealth from the poor of the world to the wealthy took place in 2 years. The greatest transfer of wealth in human history, from the poor to the rich. The greatest consolidation of power in history, by big corporations, by big tech, by the states and governments and intelligence agencies. The biggest consolidation of power in the history of the world. But when I protested on the 5th of November, with my press card on display, saying I want to discuss and inform people what was going on, the police just round the road here, the police bundled me to the floor, 30 of them dragged me to the police station, and that evening the NUJ members who were observing this went to the head of the NUJ and said, we observed one of our members being bundled to the floor and arrested for no crime, just for speaking about free speech. And I've been doing that for nearly 40 years at Speaker's Corner. The head of the NUJ, I requested my subject access request from the NUJ. The head of the NUJ conspired with the police authority to have me arrested and to have my press card seized from me, claiming that anyone who opposed the measures taken by the government was a far-right conspiracy theorist. The truth of the matter is, there's a lot of talk about conspiracy theories in the world today. The main conspiracy theories in the world you need to be concerned about is the conspiracies happening in here, the conspiracies happening in Downing Street, the conspiracies happening in Washington, the conspiracies happening in the mass media, the conspiracies between the ruling elite and the exercise of control over the world. Seize back power over your lives. Organize, combine, organize, educate, agitate, mobilize the people from below, get the young people on the streets, coordinate, combine, mobilize the world to overthrow the tyranny that they are moving towards today. Thanks very much.
Wow. That's a man who's practiced his speaking skills. Beautiful, thank you. And a powerful, powerful message. Since Heiko Khoo brought this up, I'm going to show to you something that you may not be able to see for very much longer. You see, I've put a sticker on the front of there because the symbol on the front of that book got 4 of my comrades arrested for hate crimes. Now, if you look at the title of this book, it says Zionism, a racist, anti-Semitic and reactionary tool of imperialism. So what is it this book is trying to do? Number one, it's a history book. Information, all information which is already in the public domain. We didn't make any of it up, we just pulled it together to create a brief overview of the available evidence, and an accessible narrative for people who don't have time to go and do big investigations for themselves, right? It's a small book. All historically accurate information. It's a history book. It's also a call to arms against racism. Against racism, against supremacy. But our people were arrested on crimes, on charges of hate crimes, of anti-Semitism. for questioning Zionism. This is the narrative of our ruling class. This is the way they use their control of the media to warp reality and twist our brains. This is how they can put Julian Assange inside there and turn justice system on its head, where the criminals investigate the innocent man and the stenographers for power report it as if it's a meaningful process and repeat what they're told to repeat in the order of importance that they're given by the press office at Downing Street or in the High Court or wherever the press release is being issued from. This is how our minds are controlled. And the more that our rulers and their system decay and become separate from the people, the more their words lose connection with reality. They say one thing, but they mean the opposite. You know, I grew up all my life with horror stories about communism and how awful it was and how, well, this might not be the best system, but it's better than the alternative because what they have is so horrendous. And now you realize all the stories they scared us with about Big Brother watching you was projection. We received their information and believed in it because it's what we expect from a state, to abuse its people and lock them up and persecute them and scare them and bombard them with lies. That all made sense to us because that's the reality of the world we live in. It's not the truth about socialism and communism, it's the truth about capitalism and imperialism. And it lands with us because we're primed to receive it because of the way that we live. And the dystopia we are living in right now, they scare us with the idea there's something worse around the corner. Don't agitate, don't organize, don't try and change the world. What you'll get will be worse. Total crap. It is bullshit, but it lands with us because we live in fear right now. And actually, they are projecting on us their crimes. When they told us horrific lies about the so-called crimes of the Libyan government, the so-called crimes of Colonel Gaddafi in Libya, it was total projection of the way they behave around the world. Colonel Gaddafi was a hero in the Middle East, in Africa. They murdered him for standing up to them. They told horrendous, disgusting lies about him and his people to prime us for not opposing their war to destroy Libya. And look at what happened to the world since they destroyed Libya. The most terrible crime, not just against Libya, against the peoples of the world. Against the peoples of the world, that crime. And we should remember also the important lesson for the workers of this country from that war was what our anti-war movement was doing in the Libya war. Because it tells you everything you need to know about what a controlled opposition looks like. They organized demonstrations against Libya. They repeated all the lies that the bourgeois press was telling about Colonel Gaddafi in their own propaganda. They said, yes, it's true. Colonel Gaddafi's killing his own people. It wasn't true. There was no reason to say it was true. They repeated it. They said, yes, it's true, the people of Libya want to get rid of Colonel Gaddafi. That wasn't true. There was no evidence for saying that. There was no reason to say that. There was a massive propaganda campaign of lies, like there's been against Julian. What are we told about Julian? He did this, he did that. He put some people in America at risk. He raped some girls. They come up with horrible crimes against him. Why? To keep us away from finding out the truth for ourselves, to make us feel that even asking a question makes us questionable. That's how they control the narrative. They make their propaganda so hysterical that to even start to question it makes you look as if you might sympathize with the horrible things they're saying. Remember what they said on the 8th of October, that what they said Hamas had done. They don't say Palestinian resistance, they say Hamas. Why? Because they've labeled Hamas terrorist and they've banned Hamas. So if you talk about Palestine now, you're supporting Hamas and Hamas is banned, so you're a terrorist. I've had Members of my organisation arrested under terrorism charges, their homes raided by armed police in the middle of the night. Why? Because we handed out a leaflet in support of the Palestinian people's right to resist. Their right to resist, enshrined in international law, agreed on by multiple United Nations resolutions. Why is this shocking? There's nothing shocking about it. Why are we being targeted for saying what we've said for 20 years? Because the ruling class fears that at this moment, when people are looking at and thinking about Palestine, there's a possibility that a message they didn't mind us saying when no one was listening might be listened to by a movement that's growing and becoming interested and activated and awoken. A load of people are waking up, and your ruling class wants to stop the people who are waking up from connecting with the people who've got something to tell them. Because there is where the danger lies, and that's what this issue of free speech is all about. They don't mind me saying all the things I've been saying for 30 years, as long as no one can hear me. That's fine. But they do mind if there's a big audience, and that audience is growing and is connected and might decide to start moving. Then they're worried. Julian threatened the status quo, not just because he revealed the crimes of imperialism. People have been doing that as long as imperialism has existed. But he did it on a platform that had mass awareness. He did it in a way that many, many people found out, and those crimes couldn't be denied. And the proof went round the world. And now it can't, the genie's out of the box and it can't be put back in. Everybody knows that when they lied us into war in Iraq, every single thing they told us to get us into that war was a lie. Not only that, we know that when they told those lies, they knew they were lies. You know, I'm old enough, I remember when we were being lied into Iraq and how big the movement was against that and how comfortable the ruling class felt to ignore the anti-war movement. Why? Because the leadership of the anti-war movement said this to the 2 million people on the streets. They went, well done everyone for coming out, you've made history. How do we make history? You've made the biggest march ever. Well done, see you next time. What could they have done? What could they have said? 2 million people ready to take their orders? Imagine if they'd have been prepared to use that power. The ruling class knew they weren't going to. So they were happy. They sent the bombers the other way while we were marching through the streets of London on a Saturday, upsetting nobody, stopping nothing. What they didn't say to us was, let's go down to the city, barricade the stock exchange, let's go to Parliament and Whitehall and barricade the offices where all these orders are being taken and carried out. Let's go to Northcote and stop the planes taking off. They could have done that. That might have given the ruling class pause. That might have made them feel that they had to stop and think again about their war. This marching up and down is one thing, but we've got to work out what to do with that power once we've started to organise it. And this is something that the misleaders of our movement are not prepared to tell us. And the fear, the punishment beating that's being given to Julian Assange reflects the ruling class understands what workers have not yet woken up to. That the real power in this country is in our hands. We have to organise to use it, but we have it. They can't commit their crimes without our cooperation, and this is the message we need to take back to all our trade unions, to our schools, to our communities. If we organise to refuse to cooperate, there is nothing they can do. They don't fight the wars, they don't make the bombs, they don't even transmit the lies. They don't know how to do any of the jobs. They give the orders and we follow them. If we refuse to follow the orders, they can't do anything. And this is the understanding that needs to be awoken in people. Now, look, since we've made this little speaker's corner here, and we have a microphone, I'm going to do an open mic now. So anyone who'd like to come up and address the crowd, feel free.
Go on.
Come on.